The only reason why we know is because there were survivors that were left to tell the story. So they could go and tell the other Arab villages that if the Zionist brigades were coming, that they must evacuate. The massacre was committed by Zionist forces. Radical right-wingers led the attack, but were supported by the Haganah, which later became the IDF. But Deir Yassin was not an isolated massacre. It was a pivotal moment. Deir Yassin helped convince the Arab governments to fight Israel. People fled their towns and villages, fearful that what happens at Deir Yassin might happen in their towns. 700,000 people never allowed to return to their homes. Palestinians call this the Nakba. It's also known as catastrophe. But this wasn't just the fog of war. The Nakba was, in the words of historian Ilan Pape, a master plan for the massive expulsion of Palestinians, also called Plan D or Plan Dalet. Hundreds of thousands were expelled before Israel's so-called War of Independence had ever started. Prime Minister David Ben-Gurion, to use Pape's words, orchestrated the ethnic cleansing of Palestine. These were not merely nationalists or settlers run amok. This was clearly defined state policy. To this very day, Israel denies having forcibly expelled Palestinians, instead claiming that they voluntarily left their homes. This myth can be considered one of the earliest and perhaps most powerful forms of Hasbara. In Hebrew, Hasbara means advocacy or explanation. In the Western world, it just means lying. In 1948, there were Jewish extremists supported by the main military raiding and depopulating Palestinian communities. In 2024, we have the same problem. In 1948, the Israeli government told the world that Palestinians were responsible for their own suffering, lying about the orphans, widows, and the homeless that Israel had created. In 2024, we have the same problem. And in 1948, when people all over the world took notice of Israel's savage treatment of Palestinians, Israel could only respond by lying, using Hasbara to tell a different kind of story about its atrocities. In 2024, we still have the same problem. Now, people always ask me, Hasan, why is Israel so important? And I think this is a rhetorical trick. Why is Israel's allegiance to America so important? I think a lot of people ask this in earnest, but some people ask because they want me to say anti-Semitic things. They think that I'm going to say, oh, because Jews are powerful, they control the media, they control the government. This is not true. That's not the reason. At this point, at different points throughout time, the story in Israel and Palestine has been more or less the same. But ultimately, Israel has served different purposes for the United States, its primary benefactor. Israel has been our Cold War ally. Israel has been a punisher of misbehaving Arab oil states. Israel has been a partner in Western espionage. It is an unsinkable aircraft carrier in a resource-rich region. That's very important to American State Department interests. But for 66 years, the violence has continued, with broad support from the West. The Israeli government has been free to occupy Palestinian lands and destroy Palestinian life. Ever since the failure of the Oslo peace process in 2000, the rise of the settler movement, and Benjamin Netanyahu taking control of the Israeli government, America's ironclad support for Israel has remained exactly that. But in the last decade, something has changed. Two things have changed, as a matter of fact. The first is that Israel has totally lost the younger generation. The younger generation of Americans, but also the younger generation of the Western world in general, who are shocked by its policies in occupied Palestinian lands. And the second thing that has happened is that Israel's powerful advocates in US politics and media, the Israel lobby, no longer have a total stranglehold on the left and the right. The media is not as favorable to Israel as it once was. I'm obviously a living, breathing example of this. I think someone like myself would not exist in any other format, in any other medium, in any other time. But that's not the entire story, obviously. I'm not just here to focus on myself and what I do. I think I want to talk a little bit more about the broader picture, the bigger picture. You never could really hide a genocide from the world, but it's especially difficult in the present moment. Every day, we are inundated with footage from Gaza of untold atrocities, countless atrocities. We see depictions of the worst that humanity has to offer. We see children in body bags, drone strikes, mass displacement, the horror. We see missing relatives, sick babies, wailing mothers, and so on. This accumulation of this evidence, freely available on today's internet, is what is currently burying Israel in the court of public opinion. It's turning Israel into a pariah state. Hasbara wasn't built to refute this many dead children. Israel was really bailed out in the media in the past because of how slow the establishment press was to recognize the atrocities that are unfolding. It took prestigious outlets many weeks and months to tentatively identify an obvious genocide that quickly came together in a matter of days. Nowadays, you learn about the gruesome conditions of Sde Teiman, a concentration camp, or quadcopters sniping children, or broadcasting the sound of children crying for help to lure out unsuspecting Palestinians with the express purpose of murder, months before it reaches the headlines of legacy publishers in the West. That is, if they're covered at all, like the pro-rape riots, pro-rape January 6th, that took place after the Israeli government tried to prosecute 9 concentration camp guards for, I'm sorry for using this language here, but for raping Palestinian prisoners to death on camera. I say tried because not only did the riots succeed, the main perpetrator became a television personality. And so we have learned since October 7 that Israel can conduct such wide-scale atrocities, killings, kidnappings, and bombings and expulsions, even without its usual PR shield, so long as its actual political shield in Washington holds up, as well as the Iron Dome. Now, there is a subtle but horribly corrosive effect that this has had on how people understand the world around them. At the very moment when fact-based reporting and serious journalism is most needed in this time, people are distrustful of the news. Platforms like Twitter routinely surface the worst of the worst kinds of content, but the most divisive, most hateful content. But Elon Musk is not the only person responsible for this. And I hate Elon Musk, okay? I hate Elon Musk as much as you guys hate Oxford College. I heard that if I say that, I'll get some applause breaks there. So that was my exit ramp. But it's not just Elon Musk, it's not just Twitter. It's happening all around. Young people, men in particular, who don't have much education or literacy skills with no hopeful prospects of the future are being propagandized by waves of right-wing influencers who have never had megaphones this loud. Although this issue most often gets brought up in the context of the 2024 election and Donald Trump, there's more to this. I think it's important to connect it to Palestine as well. These are forces who want to normalize the current levels of violence and to convince people that actually it's good to be this bloodthirsty. While it was Joe Biden who gave Israel the blank check with which to commit a genocide, that decision has created an entire galaxy of right-wingers who are actually in position to cash it. And cash it they are currently. If you've seen the Donald Trump cabinet pics, you know exactly what I'm talking about.